Hey everyone, we are live. Happy Friday and welcome to CMGR Hangout, the community built by, for, and managed by community managers. We often debate whether or not social media is actually a community platform, but what we rarely bring up is really how the two can work in tandem. So I know this past summer we discussed community platforms with a pretty fantastic panel, and while we were talking about questions for it, Jordan Reeves actually came up with some thoughts about how social media and community platforms can actually create more of a symbiotic relationship. So today, that's what we'll be talking about. Rosemary, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Rosemary O'Neill, President, CMO of Social Strata. We make the Hoop.law community platform, and I've been around in the community space for about 15 years.
So is it my turn?
Over to you.
Okay, I'm Maggie Malik. I'm the Director of Digital Public Relations at MMI Agency in Houston, Texas. We are a full-service agency. We handle social media, marketing, public relations, events, everything for about 80 different clients that are all over the world.
Is this me? Can you hear me? Hi everyone, this is Lori and I am the community manager for Movi. We are a video messaging app for Android right now. We will be coming to iOS very soon, but the Movi community is actually the first community that I've managed.
I'm Erica McGilvery, and I'm the Senior Community Manager at Moz. We make SEO and online marketing software. We have 21,000 customers, but we have over 400,000 community members because in addition to our software, we provide a bunch of education to the marketing community.
Hey everybody, my name is Dom Garrett, at Dom Garrett. I am the social media specialist for CET International. Really excited to be here. Glad to be on a panel with so many wonderful people. And I would say that everybody else who wants to start the Brian Fanzo fan club can line up behind me. I consider myself fangirl, and everybody can take a number.
I'll pay you later.
Oh.
Am I next? I think I'm next after. I think you threw me off there, Dom. So thank you. Oh, Dennis.
Oh, why don't you go ahead? Why don't you go ahead, Brian? I'll go down.
Sorry, yeah. Sorry, Dennis. I didn't mean to jump in on it. Yeah. So Brian Fanzo, Chief Digital Strategist, and apparently I paid Dom before we got on the show. But I set up and run communities, mostly social business side. Recently now focusing a lot on social communities from Twitter chats to Google Hangouts in that world. And always fun to be here. And now I won't cut you off, Dennis.
No worries. Go Steelers. I'm actually a New York Giants fan. I'm Dennis Shao with DNN. I run content marketing. DNN is a technology company. We have an online community platform called Evoke Social. And I'm excited to be here today. From a panelist point of view, this is my largest hangout ever. So thanks I'm happy to be here with the other panelists.
Okay, I guess it's me. Hi, my name's Adrian. I'm the marketing manager at Vanilla Forums. And glad to be on this panel too, because social media is a great thing, and so our community. So I'm glad there's a whole range of people here from community platforms and various other tools.
Awesome, thank you guys. And I'm Sherry, I forgot to mention that, just in case you don't know, I co-produce CMGR Hangout here, normally with Brew. Today Dom is co-hosting with me, and Carrie is over on Twitter end of things. So let's get things started with question one. Should it be a platform or just social media channels?
Definitely not an either-or question, in my opinion. It's a both and all of the above, and use it how it benefits your strategy and your customers. Definitely, not either-or.
Yeah, I agree. I always get in trouble. People say that I use the word social community a lot and when I'm describing a lot of stuff what I do, and mostly that is because I kind of look at social as something that amplifies and can kind of not only another avenue of bringing people together, but rather than always having to chase people down to where they're at, it kind of gives you the ability to kind of connect across, without boundaries.
Yeah, I agree completely with Brian and Rosemary. What's nice about having a community aside from your social network is it's one central location, and you can kind of highlight people's strengths and how they're using your system or your platform, whatever it is. So like for us, we use our community to kind of highlight our users' content and how they're using the app. So it's just a nice central location for everyone to come and share.
For my part, I think one of the things is that social networks don't do a really good job of discovery. And if you're, let's say, someone that likes big green egg barbecues, for example, it's much easier to get information in the community than trying to find what you're looking for on Twitter or Facebook. I mean, there are Facebook pages and Twitter feeds and such not, but if you're trying to search and find information or join in a conversation, I think a community does a much better job.
I agree with you completely, Adrian, and one of the reasons I really wanted to be on this specific panel is because I'm going to be I'm actually working on and developing an app right now that is basically a community platform for events. And one of the problems that we realize, especially in that sector, is that it's so hard to discover the exact people that you want to, and to get that information really, really quickly. One of the reasons I think Google Plus does such a good job, even though they are considered a social platform, is because they focus on the community aspect of it and building things around those types of circles. And so that's what a community platform itself really does, is that it just narrows it in and it gets rid of all of that excess noise that you have going on all the time on all those other platforms.
Yeah, so my thought is that it depends on what you mean by community platform. I think from a platform vendor, I'd love to see more and more use of community platforms, but I think it depends on the community. And what I mean by that is there are some social networks. So we talk about social network versus platform, and in some cases, if based on the nature of your group, you could use a social network. So I'm in part of some LinkedIn groups, and the entire community, if you will, is in that LinkedIn group, and they don't have a need per se for a platform. I'm part of some Facebook groups that are for content marketers in which they're using Facebook. So for those, like in casual gatherings, I think social network services are fine. I think in other cases where you might need a platform or where you might want access to the data, you want to do some reporting, you want to do some customization, you want to integrate to like a CRM. So it all depends on the use case.
I definitely agree with you, Dennis. It really depends on your community and what you also need as a community manager. Moz does a mixture of both. We have social media, but then we also have an on-site forum on our site. And we've kind of found an interesting crossover where we've been using LinkedIn and a LinkedIn group that's really similar to our community forum. And we often get really frustrated with the LinkedIn platform because we don't have the flexibility to build in the moderation tools that we need as moderators. So at least I feel that community can sometimes be, sometimes it's less qualified people to eventually be customers, which that's fine. It's people there getting education, but sometimes the education is more beginner level versus people that are looking for advanced online marketing tactics.
Erica, I have a question for you from that standpoint. I'm curious, when do you feel like, that's 3 different homes for your community technically. Are you repeating the same message or content on those, or does each one kind of have a different strategy? 'Cause I think that's a question I get a lot. I know I'm a big fan and a customer from Moz perspective, and I think managing that, I can imagine that has a lot of work.
Yeah, so we actually have a team of 5 people and more part-time people to help manage. Each place is a little different. We do, for our main content that we share on our blog, we share across all of our social platforms, but say we wouldn't necessarily push it in our LinkedIn group, we wouldn't necessarily push it even on our Q&A forum. And we really see that even if customers follow us on multiple channels, it's not like we get comments being like, oh, I already saw this on Facebook, or you guys posted that same thing on LinkedIn. And, you know, social media is so large, it's so rapid. If you're looking at your own streams, you're bound to miss something, even from your best friends.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I kind of want to talk about Dennis's point a little bit more. I think it's really important to, if you're going to start a community, I'm a huge proponent of research. I think community platforms aren't the field of dreams. If you build it, that doesn't necessarily mean people are going to show up and use it. You should probably ask, you know, your community if they need a separate platform and find out where they want to engage with you, where they want to engage most. We had a big client, big insurance company like 2 years ago, and they decided that they wanted to build a Facebook too, I guess, for people who had their insurance to interact and talk to each other. When it was all said and done, despite our best recommendations and research, they did it anyway, and no one used it, and it ended up being, I think, $10,000 per community member was the final investment or something ridiculous like that. So I think you should ask, you know, your community what they want before you just go out and spend this huge investment on the other platform.
Yeah, I think
and 10 grand is cheap for that kind of stuff too. I mean, you can see those bullets that cost 50, 60 grand.
Yeah, I think the other thing is when you think about it with social is because you don't have to segment things. I mean, I'm a big proponent on social listening. I think I always focus on social listening aspect. But you know, what you don't have. I've now taken a large community, a 9,000 person community that was a Twitter-based only community, moved them into a Google Plus community, and now moving them from Google Plus into an actual platform community, and that is a nightmare. And it's a nightmare not only because the community is asking to be moved, but at the same time, are we providing new values by adding all these new locations? And now do I still have to manage these other homes? Because, I mean, the Facebook groups, Dennis, I'm in similar groups on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I find myself going to the one where it has the most engagement and ignoring the other ones. And I think that's the problem you get when you have too many homes. So now, I mean, I'm even orchestrating on the one that I'm working with consulting. We're going to kill the Google Plus community only because I think that's the only way to get people to embrace the platform because they already love the community, but I'm afraid we'll kind of leave stragglers across both.
I think it's also important, you know, for your human resources across your platforms if you're trying to move people or trying to adjust or trying to manage multiple places. You know, like Moz, we have lots of presences. Sometimes we're better in some places than others, but we try to get really good at one thing first and then move on to the next thing and build upon that. And you have to have the resources to maintain them because I absolutely agree if it's with Brian, because if people aren't active there, you're not going to check it and your community members aren't going to care and they aren't going to check it either.
It's also a matter of not going out and building the Taj Mahal before you have occupants, right? You want to build your minimum thing that you need and get that traction going before you even think about going off to even a platform or anything like that. You want to make sure you have some center of gravity going before you go off and spend that $10,000. I mean, definitely as a vendor, hearing a story like the insurance company story just kills me inside because I like to actually turn away people that don't have the right strategy in place because I don't want it to be a big fail like that. I want it to be a big success. So you gotta get the agency folks or whoever's guiding them along to try their hardest. Sometimes they won't listen.
Yeah, but related to that, I mean, what do you do when you have a client who has this, they've got their purchase order and they're ready to spend $1 million on a community platform and they don't care about your advice? How do you kind of turn them away from that? Because I feel like with this, we deal with that. We've had probably three big clients that have wanted to invest quite a bit in community platforms where we don't, based on research, think it's a great idea.
A lot of times I'll see people doing pilot projects, small little pilot projects first before they go in whole hog, and we definitely support that. So I'd be curious to hear from some of the other guys, like how do you address that when someone's there with that check? You know, you want to make sure they have their strategy straight first.
I usually focus on who they got the idea from or who their competition is from a standpoint of, hey, what's your what tool is it, or what company are you trying to emulate? And then I often reach out to that community manager or that community and say, hey, where did you guys start? And 9 times out of 10, they didn't start platform first and go that way. And I think that's, it goes into my, favorite buzzword of screenshot awesomeness. I like to screenshot other people doing other things, because then I can use that as leverage, because it's not just me being the angry guy that you're not listening. Hey, listen, I got these 3 other people that you want to be like, and they didn't do the same thing, so, shut up and listen to me finally.
So as a marketer, I often talk about, we find a lot of value in case studies, and I think if you've got somebody, it's really hard to turn down someone who's got a $100,000 purchase order, but I think what we might need is the anti-case study, which is someone who's gone and done a community too fast and has not got the strategy plan, and show the client how you need to slow down, build it slowly. So it's almost like showing, you might not want to name the organization that failed, but you want to profile why they failed.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's always important to ask people too, what are you trying to accomplish with this, right? Like, what are you trying to do that you can't already do? So I know for us, we started with Facebook pages before we moved into vanilla, and the reason that we did that was just to gauge like the interest there first. But we never actually had Facebook groups. It was a little different than moving from a group to a platform. But when we did that, we were able to make a pretty smooth transition just by combining the comments on the articles with the community, etc. So it worked really well. So it sounds like we could actually talk on question 1 all day, but I'd like to go ahead and transition into question 2, which is how does social media help a community platform grow? So once you make that choice to go, how can you then use your social media channels to help grow the community platform?
So I'll start this off.
Go ahead, Laura.
Mind, Dom, sorry. So I think what you can really do with social media, that's your way to kind of target these niche groups. You can kind of start building your relationship there through social media with different groups that would work well on your platform. And then it's more of a warm transition into the community, so it's not cold. And the nicest thing about that, too, is now that you've made relationships with different niche groups, they all become part of your community, and you've got different opinions, and you've got different groups in there, so the backgrounds are different, but the conversation then can grow, and it's just more organic, too, from that point.
Yeah, those are really good points. I think one of the good things about social media, or one of the ways it can help with your community, is when you're sharing really great content and it's out there, it can bring people back into your community. So I really see social media as a way to really connect and bring people into the community, and vice versa as well. It's a very strong tool.
Yeah, when you're allowing that social sharing, exactly, all the members, followers then become almost possible members as well, because those little ripples start rippling out, and you don't know where your great content's going to end up as they start sharing.
Yeah, I think, in the world we're living in now with the personal branding and that side of the house too, I think there's an element there where if we're promoting and sharing content of those that are doing great things not only in our community but externally, it's the greatest recruitment tool you could get, because we're now highlighting the people that we know. So I mean, I even like tools like Scoop It or some of the Metal It, and these ones that allow you to curate, give your curated content a home, because then I think you're able to actually not only amplify content for your community, but give all the people that want to know, hey, what are people in your community sharing? You now have a public social media home, and that includes videos, all of these type of things. If you give your community a social media content home, it's a great recruiter for communities.
I think something that works really well too, and we've done this for clients in the past, but I think my favorite campaign that's doing this right now, I'm a total Under Armour fangirl, and they have this whole I Will What I Want social media campaign. They've got 10 main I Will What I Want women ambassadors, but it all goes back to a workout community platform that they have created. Between the 10 ambassadors post on their social media channels about I Will What I Want. Check it out. They've got tons of followers. I started getting into it, and I didn't think that I needed another fitness community, and I'm totally now a part of this because I have this fangirl crush on one of the ambassadors. So I think that's something that you can do that works really, really well. Pick some people that are going to be your champions. They can go talk about it on social media, and then all of the people that love them are going to come.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because I mean, when you really think about it, you know, obviously we all know this. You're not going to speak the same way on Facebook that you're going to speak on LinkedIn, that you're going to speak on Twitter. And if you are able to really have people within your community, a core group of ambassadors or whatever you want to call them, that are actually in those different areas, talking the language of those areas, it makes it a whole lot easier for you as a community manager, because you're not the one that has to go out there and be everywhere. You know, they're really authentic with their community built on those platforms, and then they can drive them back to yours. You know, it's sending your minions out to different places.
Yeah, and it's absolutely important, though, too, when you're just building a community. You have to create a structure there for everyone, so people can kind of, they can see it, they can then take that and run with it, essentially. So you do have to build some framework, and like for us, like I said, it's sharing people's highlights and the way that they're using the system, and then people can kind of go from there and follow that path as well.
Yeah, a neat thing I've seen lately, too, is that one of our communities is made little special pretty badges to represent the person's membership in that community that they could specifically take, the members can take and use as kind of badge of honor on their Twitter profile or like other social network profiles, so they can brag about, I'm a member of XYZ community, and that's another way. So if you give people the tools to spread the word, that makes it a lot easier.
I love that, Rosemary. I think that's like, I mean, how ridiculous is we fight for badges on Foursquare just for no reason other than it sits on my own phone. But I think the idea of promoting what we're investing in and we're spending our time in, I mean, not only does it give us a sense of belonging, but it also gives us an idea that, you know, like, hey, these are the cool kids, and that's a lot of what ends up happening. You know, even from, you know, the idea of, you know, I'd use a lot of social listening tools, and I will follow certain events and hashtags, and people will use that event hashtag throughout the year because they want to be associated with that event. And I like to think that the events that are changing, and this goes to Dom, and Dom, we need to talk about your app maybe, but I like apps that are focusing on building digital communities along with their app, or along with their live event, not just a one-time live event. I mean, I think Content Marketing World is a great example of a transitioning into a community of people at an event, and people, you know, talk about the orange they're wearing throughout the year and highlight CM World. So I think it's an awesome idea that people are using badges, or even, you know, if it's a special hashtag to associate, and, you know, for belonging.
I definitely think you can do a lot of, I mean, it's essentially ego bait, right? Giving people special badges that they can share, or calling them out to be like, oh, so-and-so is having a great discussion on our community forum about X, Y, and Z. You should come and check it out. It'll be really amazing. We've seen a lot of success with pictures of people wearing swag. We're pretty lucky that we can be really generous in giving out a bunch of, you know, t-shirts and water bottles and stickers and all sorts of those things, and, you know, people love it. They, you know, pin it on Pinterest, share it on Google+, come back to our forum to thank us for, you know, sending this to them, and they're wearing it, you know, they're representing us out there in the world.
Yeah, I think Eric, that's the funny part about that, real quick. I don't mind cutting you off, Dom. I'm just kidding. But actually, MozCon is what I knew of before I knew Moz. I'm not a marketing person to begin with. I'm new to that game. I came from the social business tech side, and I remember going like, man, I've seen water bottles. I've seen people wearing the shirt. I've seen that, you know, the little digi, you know, little guy, and I thought, man, that's genius, because then I was looking it up I wanted to be what those were, you know, what got them there. So, sorry, Dom.
Oh, no, you're fine. It's just, it's one thing that I find very interesting is that, I mean, what we're sort of talking about here, the fact that it can keep the community going in different areas, it can keep it going, you know, throughout the year. You know, I'm a very big on posting things natively. I think that's really important. Like, if you're going to create some video content, I think you should put it right up on Facebook. You should put it on YouTube. You should put it on those multiple places. And instead of just trying to, you know, link bait and just drive somebody there. And I think that's what social media really does to help it grow, is because, you know, you have it more with just it grows outside of the bounds of just the community platform when you have it in all these different social media channels. It's like steroids to it in different areas where you can even sort of gain those communities on those on those social media platforms for your community platform. Rambly. It was all good until Brian cut me off.
Then it got mixed up in your head.
So the way I look at
taking the opposite approach. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dennis.
So the way I look at, I'll be brief. The way I look at social media is, in your community, you might have 1% of the world's population. It's probably less than 1%, but that means 99% of the world's population is not in your community. But of that 99%, a lot of those people are on social media. So it's a great way for you to get your community and its content out in front of the 99% and draw them in. It's a great recruitment tool.
For sure. Good point. Yeah, so on the opposite side of that, how does the community platform actually help social media with deeper engagement?
Well, I think one of the things that makes it interesting, it kind of crossed back to the original or the previous question, is that if someone's really has an interest in a certain topic or passionate about something that the community is around, it can drive traffic in and kind of work as a two-way street. Using the example before, like barbecuing. I mean, if I really love barbecuing and I'm posting pictures, I'm sure people in my feed, they'll be happy that I'm eating barbecue, but at some point they're going to say, hey, go to a barbecue community. And the same way that I might be sharing stuff from a barbecue community to my stream, if I have other friends that are interested in barbecue, might say, hey, let's go check out this barbecue community. So I think it works in that way. I don't know if it's really a separate question so much as a two-way street that kind of goes back and forth.
Yeah, and there's one thing that I read, actually, give a shout out to Green Chili Addict on Twitter, but they said that Twitter is a great platform, people can engage quickly, and then you get them to Google+, and it's a place where the conversation can go further. That's the thing that I really think goes well with the deeper engagement from social media. You can kind of only have so much of a back and forth when it comes to 140 characters, and I think we're all really there, and there's a lot of conversation that has there. You get them to a place where there is a forum, you get them to a place where it sort of allows for more of that connectivity. And then, of course, those communities have actual live events where you meet somebody in real life. And then when you do that, you really, it deepens it a lot. So.
Well, Don, that's a good point, too, because, I mean, some support communities, the reason that they're there is because Twitter is great, hey, I have a problem, but then trying to troubleshoot a problem in 140 characters doesn't work so well. So, where else can you send them? And that's, where I think a community can help.
And Dom, I'm confused. Where do we take them to Ello? No, I agree. I agree on the exact same idea. One of the other things that I like to use internal for is I like to arm and prepare my team to look good on social. So if they are, I will share a post and say, hey, on the internal community, and say, hey, this is a great post about A, B, and C. It would probably look good on your LinkedIn profile. And really sharing that, internally, so that externally they're able to, kind of look good. It's almost arming them across the board.
That's a good point.
The other thing that community can lend to the social network sphere is those deeper relationships. I see like the social networks are very bantery, very back and forth. Like you already have this sort of inside joke going or something you shared, and where the community is the deeper conversation and the pictures of what happened all in one place and that whole knowledge base of all of that history. Whereas then the social network can be the, hey, I saw this last week, was hilarious, that quick little hit. So they really complement each other so well.
And communities also have their own kind of culture as well, right, with inside jokes and, so as people join as well, it makes it fun as well.
That reminds me of the banana for scale joke that you always have when you're talking about people off of Reddit or Imgur.
I think one thing on social media, a lot of people put platforms and they'll they put their little bios and they'll be like, I'm an expert in this or whatever. And if they are diving into a community forum, sorry, that was my cats. They're getting a little wild here. And so anyway, if your bio says I'm an expert in X, Y, and Z, but you're part of a vibrant community and you're a voice in that community, then it shows that you can back up your bio.
That's true.
I think this Hangout is a great example of where community, so the community here is perhaps the MyCMGR site and the Google Plus page, and it's spawning an entire Twitter chat. So hello out there in Twitter, but we're really generating social media engagement by having a community gather for this Hangout.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I use the term upcycling. So you take one piece of great content and upcycle it in multiple different ways. And this is this is what I like to do with Twitter chats and interviews. If we have all this great content, like I'm thinking this, I'm making notes. Not only am I tweeting, but I'm typing notes into my Evernote just from a blog concept perspective of lots of these great insights. And that's taking these great pieces and arming multiple different pieces of content that can also be used internally to the community as well as externally.
Yeah, don't forget about the MyCMGR blog that goes out that I am absolutely horrible at writing for. Sherry?
Yeah, we do try to do that every week with the Hangouts just so that people can get it from a little bit of a different angle. Obviously, you're probably familiar with we have the preview post before, the Storify wrap-up afterwards, and then great people like Dom, Kimby, Nicole, and Jason who go through and actually take an element from the Hangout and write an article just so people have a good takeaway from it. Awesome. All right.
Hashtag upcycling for days.
Pretty much. So question 4, what are some ways that you can integrate social media into your community platform?
Oh, I'll take that. I think there's a couple of ways. There's the single sign-on. I think most of the platforms are doing that now. I mean, that you can connect with Facebook and Twitter and make it really easy for people to jump in and have that conversation. There's the social sharing, that if someone sees some content in the community that they can shoot it out to their networks. And I'm not so familiar with all the other ones, but we have something for social embed. So if you have like a tweet or a Facebook post, it looks nice and pretty right in the community. So they're kind of working together back and forth.
Also integrating on member profiles, allowing people to put their handles for their different profiles. I think almost everybody does that now. It's
that's true.
The ability to be like a whole person and show the different sides of yourself within the community.
And we give badges for that.
But to Brian's point, it's also important to integrate with your platform and your social media, but then also your in-person events. We're working on a campaign for the city of Houston where we have like this Houston community platform, but then all over town we have signs that say tag your photos with hashtag Houston No Limit. So that people might not know we've got this campaign going quite yet, or they're not involved in the community, but they see this sign and they wonder what it is. They take a photo, they tag it with Houston No Limit, and then they get online and they see all these other people talking about the city of Houston and how it's limitless and all these cheesy things. But so I think it's really important if you're having an event with your community members to educate them on what tag they should be using, all of those things. So then when they talk about it, all of their followers will see it as well.
Yeah, and also to that point, creating a hashtag, like you said, for an event, or maybe it's a hashtag for a certain thing that your platform can do, incorporating that into your community then allows more people to use that part of your service, and then everybody's sharing in that community, so you have kind of everybody's jumped on this little bandwagon almost, and they're sharing, so you've created a subgroup of your community, and you got to also showcase what your people are doing on the system and what your system can do ultimately.
Yeah, I know on ours we worked really hard to really bring our Facebook activity into our site as well, and that's one way that we've helped them work together. So when we actually post one of the articles from our community onto Facebook, the comments that happen there also get brought into the site through a trending activity feed and then in the comments below.
Yeah, but Sherry, on that one, like you're doing that from Facebook, and do you have a different social media manager than you do community manager, or are those two lock in step? Like, how do you manage the two, not only strategies but content there?
Well, it's all within the same team, but there are two different people, so those sit like within their own distance. Not a big deal.
I think it's really important too if you're using hashtags to have them very organically come out of your community. We've seen a lot of bad forced hashtags. I mean, I think we all saw like the McDonald's fail where they tried to force everyone to talk about how great their products or their food is, and that didn't work so well for them. It's also, I've seen events in particular make the misstep of having 2 hashtags or 3 hashtags or try to hashtag every session or every room, and that gets really confusing, and especially if Twitter is still kind of the place where a lot of hashtag conversations, a lot of event, live tweeting is a huge thing, and if you have these desperate hashtags, you're confusing your audience, but you're also taking up that 140 characters of precious space.
Yeah, or
Yes.
a hashtag that's like this long and it's insane.
Yeah, I've said I'd be willing to pay for the 141st character, so anybody that uses a long hashtag is a frustrating. And I think hashtag has changed where, like CM World, I'll use Content Marketing World even though I wasn't there, but they use CM World for a Twitter chat that they run every week. They use CM World in their posts, and their name of their event is CM World. It's kind of a genius way of tracking things across. Social Fresh is another one that does it really well, where Social Fresh does the hashtag with the event, with their content, with their website. And I coach personal branding, and I always focus on like you got to be found and you have to be able to be associated. I think that's partially what this what we're talking about here is because if your internal community, whatever if you find that one hashtag or one way to associate across the board, I think that's a powerful way of doing it.
And not only do you have to make it organic, you have to make it so that you try to take away the least amount of user error possible. Something like CM World is very, very easy. One thing that I'm working for, at least, in this whole event sector is you're going to have a lot of different people there, and you want to make sure, how can you make sure that whatever hashtag is associated with it is easy so that you can pull in all of that content rather than having, 8 different things all over the place.
Yes, so I saw a great example of an integration recently, and it was on LinkedIn. So if you consider LinkedIn a community, what I did was I published a post on LinkedIn, and someone had commented on my post, and she tagged me in the comment. So she tagged me on LinkedIn, and because my Twitter handle is associated with my LinkedIn profile, she then clicked the share on Twitter for her comment. So the comment goes out to Twitter, tags me on Twitter. So now I know, hey, I've been mentioned in this conversation, so it sent me back in to comment back to her. So it's a great way to tie activity in the community out to a social network. That's
like a triple score.
It is. I think it's the cross collaboration too. I think that's an element where I always feel like that's an extra effort. I've one that everybody wishes someone happy birthday on Facebook because we all get those 1,000 pop-ups. But I'll wish them happy birthday on Twitter. Only for the reason for me is that I feel like hey, I'm taking a little bit of an extra step. And when we think about community, it's the same way. Where if someone posted a really great post on LinkedIn, but your primary communication avenue for communicating with them is in your internal community or on Twitter. I've talked about how much business I do across Facebook Messenger, which is just crazy from a standpoint of that. But I will actually read someone's post and then Facebook message them if that's their primary way of communication. Back to Dom's point, if you and I use social listening tools and CRM tools, and in those tools I actually mark where the primary place is for them to engage me on, and I will change that if that changes, because I think that's extremely important because everyone's everywhere, but where's that one place that they are most frequently going to reply to you? Because email, I suck at email. For people that have emailed me before, I will reply to a tweet much faster than I do an email, and I'm trying to get better at that.
That was a fantastic point, Brian, but still all I can think about is I don't get 1,000 notifications on my birthday, so I'm obviously not as possible as social fans.
I was thinking the same thing.
Guys, I have a quick question for Dom here from Kristen. She says she still hasn't seen Dom's whiteboard. What does it say? Find me on Ello.
Okay. Dom's whiteboard does not say anything about Ello, but if you want to find me on Ello, it's at Dom Garrett. But I have to represent for my Tigers, who are playing the Baltimore Orioles right now. We got spanked yesterday, but we're winning, so there you go. There you go, Chris. There's your answer.
Slightly more serious question here from Terry, or maybe that one was serious.
It is to me. It is.
They want an Ello invite. That's
Fair enough. Fair enough. Terry wants to know if B2B companies have separate community platforms. I don't know what your guys' experience has been with that.
Separate from what?
Yeah, that don't.
This was back when we were talking about social networks versus community platforms, so probably separate from social networks.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, for sure.
And really, that's, a lot of them also use social business tools, from the idea of Jive, Yammer, and those elements where they're being collaboration tools that now have migrated both internally and externally. That's another avenue, especially for B2B. That's the space that I lived in before this, where I built and architected social business tools that were built to grow internal collaboration and then start to collaborate employee to community externally. And I think B2B is usually thrown in there as like, they don't do a good job. I think B2B now is the ones that are driving the innovation more than some of the other spaces, because they were behind the curve before and now they're embracing it.
It depends.
B2B is like a very hidden world too, because a lot of those communities are private, and you don't see them, you don't know they're there, but they're there and they're talking to hundreds of partners, all the time, and nobody knows it exists except the partners.
That's true, and also a lot of them don't also want to integrate with social media as well, because they don't, depending on the industry, they don't necessarily want people to be connecting on Twitter and Facebook while they're at work, and the community then becomes that hub.
Well, hopefully we're changing that. So you have to trust their employees on social, because who the hell is going to trust a company that can't trust their employees? But that's a soapbox.
Well, some of them are. Some of them, it's just they're a regulated industry, or they have other things precluding them. If they're under HIPAA constraints or financial regulations, there are just other reasons why they want to keep it completely cut off.
Well, Moz is completely B2B, so that's kind of the world that I really live in, and it's incredibly powerful for people in their jobs to be able to connect, as our learning resources are great, because you may be on a team, you may have other people who understand your brand at your company, obviously, it's what you all do together, but you may not have people that understand your specific job function. And so we have a lot of people who are in-house marketers that are coming, and they're like, oh, it's great, I can talk about, whatever industry niche I'm in all day with my coworkers, but when I try to explain to them, like, my technical SEO problem, I need to know other people who are in that space.
Yeah, and it also doesn't have to be just B2B. I think there's a lot of B2C organizations and brands that are looking to community. I've been reading a lot of articles about dwindling organic reach on sites like Facebook and even Twitter. So I think there are cases where B2C brands, will need to build community as that foundation to engage with customers. For instance, Starbucks is known for its ideas community, and they've generated great ideas for the stores based on a community that wasn't Facebook or Twitter. It was their own owned and managed community.
And if you think about the SEO juice that comes from a community of experts, and we've already seen, like, the indicators for getting a quality page ranking has to do with the expertise of the people who are posting on your site. That is what a community is all about. So if you can demonstrate the expertise of your members in a public community, that is like SEO gold.
And people want to be part of that too. It goes back to that idea that you become like the 7 people that you spend the most time around. And if you're spending your time around experts and that's what you actually have to offer, people are going to want to be inside of your community because they're going to want to learn. That's the reason so many people pay attention to this community, because there are so many awesome panelists every single week who want to pay attention to it.
Well, and I think there's also the element of using content as an enabler in the community. I was working with Cox Blue, and Cox Blue has a great blog website, but they kind of were missing the ambassador social side, so they've been building a community of ambassadors, and they're doing live events in multiple different cities. I've participated in a couple of them, where they're just bringing in all of the people that have either blogged, commented, or share their content in that region, and they're bringing them to this live event, putting them up. I mean, they do a great job of kind of connecting that world, and all of that connection started via content. It wasn't during engagement. So I think using content both as an amplifier but also as a starting point is a big piece for B2B.
Awesome. All right. We have another question here from Michael. Does the distinction between community platforms and social media go across strategy and tactical lines?
I would say from one standpoint, strategy slash tactical has to do with the divisions of the company that are directing the activities. Like I've seen it's a lot more common for, say, a community to start out in the customer service area versus social platforms starting out in marketing or PR or communications. I think all of that is converging a little bit. And all those teams are going to have to get on the same page with their strategy. I don't know if we're 100% there yet, but I think that the teams that are considering, like, should we do a Facebook page or should we do a community, should we start tweeting, those people need to get their strategy on the same page. And the things they need to think about as they're going one way or the other or both cut totally across corporate lines.
Yeah, I think it gets really dangerous when those two things happen in a silo. I think it was Sherry that said her community manager and her social media manager sit right next to each other. I feel like when you're a brand, everything needs to go up into the brand. You can't have two things that are just totally random and disjointed and have no connection. It's not good for your community members. They're going to get confused, and it's not good for telling your brand story.
Yeah, you definitely have to have things seamless for your community members. Like if they come in to ask a customer support question on Twitter, or if they come into your forum or wherever, you need to be able to have, your customer service representative be able to answer their question, or enough knowledge with your social media manager to answer it on Twitter, or to just merge it together and make it a seamless experience for them. You don't want the customer or the community member to jump through multiple hoops in order to reach the right person or gain the right information.
Yeah, and you want them to feel like they can come to you through that community, or maybe it's one of your social networks, and they're not going to feel like judged or something for not understanding something or if needing help. So, and the nicest thing too about having a community that is welcoming like that is you have plenty of people that can kind of step in and help that person out. So you get a lot of help through that community as well.
No, I think that's a good point. I think there's also the element of, we often will blame or we'll think that someone has to, everyone has to have their own story or their own answer, but it's really if the leaders have to be able to craft the story and deliver that story to all of the employees and everybody so that everybody's on the same page, the same passion, the same purpose.
Okay, guys, I have another question here, this time from Greg. How does a B2B company decide to build an internal customer community or an open community platform?
That's a good question.
Lots and lots of meetings.
I guess it comes down to the objective, really. Because, if you're wanting, the point of the external community would be to bring more people in, the benefit of SEO, the benefit of discovery. If it's internal, you kind of close it off to only people that are either aware or invited, which might work. I guess it really depends on what the objective is and what the goals are. I don't remember which panelist mentioned that, but it's really when you sit down and start thinking about what your end goal is, should help you decide what kind of community you want, either open or closed.
Well, and too, it goes back to also what kind of customer service functions we're trying to fulfill with that community platform. So if you need things like customer information or account numbers, that is not going to be an open community platform just because you can't have that number shared openly. So I think it's just deciding what that platform is going to be for.
Well, it depends on the platform, because you could have an open platform and the information can be filled in when the customer joins. We have a Salesforce integration, we have Zendesk and all these things where people fill in information, and it's not viewable to the public, but it's there if needed for one of the mods or admins to deal with someone in that case.
Right.
Yeah, there's an element that comes down to where are you protecting the content or are you protecting the conversation? I think that's a little bit of the discussion, because I worked in cybersecurity for 9 years for the Department of Defense, and everything for them was about tagging and worrying about where the hell that content was going. So I couldn't get them to adapt an open infrastructure until I put parameters in place that would flag content and not let it go into the public channels, so that I could keep it open / I would have a closed group, but they couldn't share that content outside of that closed group. And I think that's the way to kind of balance between the two. But that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of pre-work. Every piece of content uploaded to the community had to be tagged and watermarked. There's a lot of things that go into that. But there's the ability to do it on both sides, because saying that you're only going to be closed for security is a piss poor excuse. Like, that's all or nothing, and there's nothing today that is all or nothing in that realm. But there definitely has to be a nice balance, because the last thing you want are credit card numbers or employee numbers or even individual engagement out there in the public.
Well, where I've seen the B2B be closed would be if they want to charge customers for support. So in that way, it's people that are that have purchased something, or they don't want to have it free and open. But I mean, if you in a situation where you want people to discover you and find your product and get support in that way, you'd probably want it open. But to your point, I mean, it could be open or closed. You could combine the two.
So with Mazda's community forum, we kind of do a balance. So you do have to be a paying customer to come into our Q&A forum to ask or answer questions, but anyone in the public can look at the answers, they can look at the questions. It's all crawled by Google, so it's great for our SEO and things like that. So it's a little bit of a balance, but we also find that higher barrier to entry means we get better questions and less spam, so it's less moderation on our end as well.
Well, Erica, I always tell people that my favorite tool for social is follower wonk. So I as a Moz fan, just from that one element of Moz, follower wonks is one of those things that I didn't really know what it was about until I was inside the Moz community as a customer and said, oh man, they have something that can help me on my external social. And that was me learning from internal community that helped me do something that had nothing to do with what I was in there. I thought that's a pretty cool way that Moz does between the two. So kudos to your team on that side.
Thanks. Okay, guys, we're getting a little close to the end here, but I want to just throw out question 5, which is, how else can social media and community platforms work in tandem? Just if you have any other ideas that we haven't really touched on yet. Or have we covered it all?
I really like the idea of cross-pollination with the platform and the social media. I think that we talk about it all the time, and Brian is such a huge proponent of it when he's talking about, you have to find out what the right fit is for you when you're using all of these different tools. And I think that when it comes to communication with your community, you have to be willing to be open to all of these different areas and putting things on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, and then also using all of these other tools and communities and bringing it all together, because nothing is a one-size-fits-all. You're dealing with human beings and communities. That's one of the biggest things to remember. And human beings are very complex, and they're very different. We're all like a snowflake, so we need to treat our community members that way, and use everything.
I would just want to put in a plug for stepping back and putting KPIs in place, no matter what whether it's a community, whether it's Twitter, whether it's all of the above. You need to, before you do anything, you need to make sure that you know what you're going to be measuring, so you know when you're successful. Because I've seen a lot of people fall flat because they go out and they make these decisions about, we're going to use this and a mix of this, and then 6 months later they kind of are still flailing around because they never set up in advance how do they know if it worked. So, are you reducing customer support phone calls? Are you increasing revenue? Are you increasing page view traffic to your website? Like, whatever that is, come up with your numbers first.
Yeah, and that is actually to your own point too earlier, Rosemary, when you said don't come out there and try and build the Taj Mahal. I mean, you really do have to come out small, test different things, see what works, and then scale up. I mean, you have to test things, master it, and move on. And I say that all the time. And also, just by testing these little points within your community, that you can kind of see what sticks, what people kind of naturally gravitate towards, and then they could take your community in that direction, and then it grows from there.
Yeah, if you're not listening, I think probably the best takeaway from here is that you have to be listening first. You test and tweak. Social is the greatest A/B test ground that exists. There's no excuse not to just be testing and tweaking and monitoring what you're doing. Now, I just dealt with a customer that said they do lots of testing, and I asked how they reported or recorded their testing, and there was none. And I was like, well, that's not really testing. That's just a whole lot of trial and error that you didn't really care about. But I think, it's listening, testing, and tweaking, and then coming up with a strategy, and then finding the tool or the platform that makes the most sense. When you go the other direction, how do you know what you don't know? I mean, that's why you end up flailing, or why people say, oh, social media didn't work. I tried it for 6 months and it didn't help me. Well, what was your strategy? What was your KPI? So I think that's a great lesson learned from this. Spot on, Rosemary.
Thank you.
So one thing we're exploring is a lot of community platforms have social sharing capabilities, but we're looking at the concept of social sharing challenges. So the community manager can publish a challenge. Let's say the challenge is to tweet a link to join next Friday's Hangout, and the challenge can then be accepted by members, and the action can be performed and then tracked. So it's a neat way just to have a programmatic campaign to generate some social buzz.
That's cool, Dennis.
I like that. Yeah, a little
Yeah.
gamification.
Right.
And I think IBM does something similar right now with their social employees. Is they have like a little bit of a measuring bar on their internal community that shows who shared what externally in social, which I think is a pretty neat way of incentivizing without forcing someone to be social externally. That's awesome.
Yeah, you can use, there's a tool called Social Toaster, and you can have all your internal employees use that, and then when you send the email out, everybody can post through Social Toaster, and it shows you like who's doing what, and who's tweeting what, and who has the most points and all that.
Sounds like a competition I'm in.
Of course you are.
All right, I have one more question for you guys from Joey. Let me find it for you. Okay, thoughts on transparency with social employees since they're your primary line for community engagement. I know we could do an entire panel on this topic, but just real quickly, we only have a couple minutes left. What are your thoughts?
Be as transparent as possible every chance you get is the only thing I can say. And the nicest thing about that is when you are transparent and it's visible in the community, that demonstrates to not only your current users, but also future users what you're all about, how you tackle different feedback, opinions, questions. Because when you are a community manager, you're kind of on the forefront of any feedback, and that's positive and negative. So if you could be as transparent as possible in every aspect, more people will see that and kind of respect the way that you do business, ultimately the way that you deal with customers.
Yeah, we have I totally agree. We have a PR team rule. There's like 14 ladies that get together and see when we have all these clients. Whenever we tweet anything about a client or post on Instagram or whatever, we always hashtag it with client love, just because we feel like we want people to know, like, hey, yeah, I'm going to talk about Chelsea Open all the time because I'm annoying, but also it's my client. So that's our kind of team rule.
I like that.
I think it's really great to empower employees who aren't just, community managers or on customer support or people that interact with customers on a daily basis to feel free to go out and interact with customers and and disclose that they're employees, of course, and just be honest about things from their perspective.
This is like my soapbox. I have an ebook talking about your greatest asset are your employees. Your greatest rock stars should be your employees, and that's across the board. So I think that the future of I think community is the future of a lot of these companies having to relate with internal and external, and using these employees to amplify your message and relate and humanize your brand while also being on the same story. Because when it comes down to it, everybody screws up, and you're going to forgive someone that you have a relationship with, or you can put a human face with it. But I will bash Google Hangouts because I don't have a relationship with anybody from Google Hangouts, and like that. So when they fail, I blame a little logo. But I swear, if it was a person that ran Google Hangouts that had a relationship with me, I wouldn't be bashing them as a whole. I think that's like an element that we have to keep in mind. Transparency doesn't always mean you're trusting, but it gives you that authentic relationship back and forth.
Yeah, and I've said it before too. I think that as a community manager, we are really like the center point, not just for empowering the community this direction, but also for empowering everybody that's inside of your organization. So you want to filter all of that awesome stuff, empower them through there, and then pass it out in the community and have it be, like what Adrian said, it's a back and forth. So that's you want to empower them all to put out all of that because they're just as powerful as your community is.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. With that, we are actually out of time. So thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to everyone for watching. Next week, we'll be talking about tips for transitioning into a community career from a different career path. So see you next week.